Hey, everybody. I am Dr. Andy Roark, and this is the Uncharted Podcast team. We got a workflow question today. We've got a hospital, and they are hospitalizing some patients, and then there's some confusion about what happens after the patients are hospitalized. Like that first day, everybody's clear, but the second day, especially if the doctor that was there the first day is not there the second day, whose case is this? And who's supposed to be looking out for it? And who's talking to the pet owner? And who's doing the treatments on this pet? Look, this is a very, very common question that we get. I think it happens a lot because I think when practices are getting started, they're smaller. This isn't a very common thing. And then as they grow or they get bigger, it becomes more common and you have more vets and more vets are hospitalizing more patients. And suddenly you're like, why don't we have a system? Why don't we have a system here? And that's what we talk about today is what is happening here? And how do we get this sorted out? How do we get a system that people actually do? And Stephanie and I break that down. And I think this is a good episode if you like operations in hospitals, especially if you like medical leadership, medical quality, and safety reporting. So anyway, we got all that stuff in this episode. Let's get into it.
And now, the Uncharted Podcast.
And we are back. It's me, Dr. Andy Roark, and the one and only Stephanie. I'm all shook up, Goss. Oh, yeah.
Who gets our actual singing? I'm good. Yeah. How are you?
Oh, I'm good. I'm good. I got Elvis on my mind because my daughter is a certified theater nerd, like like yourself.
Like myself.
And
it's one of the things that Jacqueline and I have bonded over.
Yes. Yeah, totally. And so over this last summer, she had a bunch of internships. So she's serious about it. She's applying to college. She wants to go to the theater program. She's all about technical theater, which is like lighting, design, direction, stuff like that. And so she's currently on the crew of this play at downtown Greenville at the Downtown Theater called $1 Million Quartet. And it's like Johnny Cash and Elvis Presley. And I haven't gotten to see the show yet. So anyway, but it's this musical and everything. And she's been going and she's working with these professional actors. And, they're doing the show and everything. And school has started back at this point, but she's still doing it. And I am this Saturday, I'm going to see the show. So I'll be able to tell you who the other two parts of the quartet are then. But it's funny because she's super fired up and she really loves it. And she did it for like two weeks or so. She worked with this crew and she was just like, I love it. And I'm making them cookies. And I looked around and she had this big batch of cookies to take it to the crew. And in that moment, I had two thoughts. And the first one was, oh God, don't do this. They're going to think you're a nerd. And the second one was, who doesn't like cookies?
Who doesn't like cookies?
And also, look, if the high school kid, the high school intern
100%
cookies and you
everyone
look
is
down
love
on
it.
them, you're a terrible person.
No, everyone is going to love it. Theater people are like vet people. They are highly food motivated.
Yeah, that makes
and
sense.
It's a bunch of people who just love the younger generation and they're going to like it. They're going to love it.
Well, it's the coup de grace when she took milk too. She's like, we're going to need milk with these. And so she took milk. She took milk along. Yeah. And I told you recently she got into a car crash, like a fender bender. And so the way the car got squished, there was this sort of the panel was pressed into the wheel. So we couldn't drive it. So you had to get it towed.
Yeah.
So I turned around and I said to her, I was like, you need to get everything out of the car that you might need. And I looked and she had the milk container in her hand. It was empty. I'm sure she wasn't driving around with milk in there. But she was like, she had her purse and like a bag and some shoes and a milk container. I was like, why do you have milk in your car? Oh. She was like, they don't recycle. I'm like, okay. All right. Good for you.
My goodness.
Anyway.
Oh my goodness. I love her.
Oh, she is so funny. She's
her
such
car
her
gonna,
own person.
Is her car going to be fixable or
I haven't heard. I haven't heard yet. Literally. It happened, and I called the tow truck, and they were like, great, we're here. We're taking the car. Where do you want to take a car?
Right.
And I was like, it needs to go to the Ford Collision Center. And they're like, great. All right, see you later. And I'm like, do I need to pay you? And they were like, no, we'll bill the Ford place, and then they'll bill the insurance, and that'll be that. And I was like, okay, great. And I was like, you need anything? No, I'll drop it off. And so we get up the next morning, and Allison calls the Ford Collision place, and like, we don't have your car. And Allison looked at me and she honestly said, "Who did you give our car to?" And it was like, in that moment, I was like, I don't know. Some guy I found on the internet. Like, I Googled tow truck and I called that guy. And in that moment, I was like, did someone just take our car and leave? And of course, that's so stupid. I called him, and he was like, "Hey, yeah, I called your cell last night," and it went to voicemail, I guess. He was like, "Called your cell, and yeah, they don't let us drop stuff off after hours. So I got it here. I'll drop it off tomorrow. I'll drop it off later this morning."
Oh my gosh.
And so anyway, it finally made its way over there, but I have not heard what the damage is yet. But anyway, just seeing her like get your stuff out of the car, and like the pitiful things that she got out of the car was like she has a sticker on the car that says "Crazy Plant Lady." And she took that. She's like, "Well, this can't go." Like,
that's important. Yep.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's funny.
So anyway,
well, talk about a crummy handoff.
Oh yeah, totally a crummy handoff. Where's my car? Don't worry about it.
Where's my car? I don't know. It's still on the tow truck. Well, we have got a great mailbag today. I'm excited about this one because this is one that I think is a problem for a lot of practices. And it's one of those ones that is really fixable. So I'm really excited to nerd out about this one with you. So we got an email from a lead tech who works in a big, busy general practice, and they're tearing their hair out over the lack of patient handoffs on their team. So they're like, we have a solid team of doctors, and when it comes to hospitalized patients or day patients that are super complicated and need like multiple rounds of treatments, meds, monitoring, etc., it feels like the whole team is playing hot potato. They were like, we get the patient admitted, we do the treatment plan, we get the client permission, and then it's like the doctor feels done with the case. Like they feel like doing the treatment plan is enough of a handoff. And then where the tech is concerned is when patients are hospitalized overnight. And if that doctor is not on the next day, then they said, the patient's just kind of hanging out, waiting for somebody else to ask about them, or the technicians are chasing down a doctor the next morning to find out, hey, can you look at this patient that was here overnight? And so they're struggling with feeling like there's not a system. They're also struggling with feeling like the doctors are like, it's not my patient. And the technicians are frustrated because the patient care is delayed. They're missing treatments. They care about the patients, and they're looking at it from an unsafe perspective from the patient side. And they're like, our doctors are amazing and they're amazing clinicians, but this communication gap is killing us. And so they were asking, how do we implement a system where the doctors have consistent ownership, or at the very least, we have a handoff process that is formalized so that everybody is doing things the same way and the techs aren't left holding the bag and trying to either figure it out and practice medicine without a license, or beg and plead with the doctor to be like, hey, I know that this isn't your case, but can you just look at it because it needs treatment?
Yes. First of all, they're not playing like there is no system. There is no system. And
they're trying to be nice.
And the doctors are not playing like it's not my case. It's not my case. You know what I mean?
I was trying to be nice.
Yeah, no. I think it's good. All right. So let me just say, let me just throw this out there too. It kind of sucks inheriting other people's cases. Like again, like it does. It sucks. You know why? Because especially if your doctors are like paid on production, then like everything got worked up and done. The diagnostics were all done. And now you're being given this case. It's probably kind of on cruise control. It's not gonna generate, income for you. However, the fact that it got hospitalized tells you there's something significant going on with it. And it's going to require communication through the day with the pet owner. So you're doing the pet owner communication lift. And most vets aren't given time to see hospitalized patients. They're booked for appointments, and then, if there's anything in the back, you kind of need to juggle that as well. And so anyway, now do not hear me saying, Andy Roark says we shouldn't take patients. No, let's just call a spade a spade. If you don't have a system and you hope the vets are going to be nice and just jump up to take these train wrecks that could potentially TTS on them at any time, which again, I've seen this. I've 100% been given a pet to babysit and it burst into flames and it was my whole day was supposed to be some IV fluids and monitor, and again,
it crashes.
It crashed, and I had, and I had to get the pet owners on the phone. They don't know me, and I'm trying to tell them we need to do advanced diagnostics or repeat diagnostics from the previous day. Like, they're not fun, rewarding cases. They're just not. And so, if your system is, somebody will do it, I think that's a really dumb system. I think it's bad. So we'll talk about that. There's a way around this. So anyway, there's that for the first part. All right. I am going to give one of my patented pieces of headspace right here at the very beginning. You see it coming a mile away. If there's something that happens in your practice and it surprises you again and again, at some point, it's not a surprise. It's your business model. And so this is not a flaw at this point. It's not a problem at this point. This is how this practice has chosen to live their lives. We hospitalize a patient, and we get it ready, and we write a plan, and
then somebody take the wheel.
Woo! Jesus takes the wheel, and and hopefully we'll discharge them at some point. Like, that's it. It's Jesus take the wheel is the plan.
Yes.
And again, I'm laughing. I've seen this so many times. And it's because getting the system in place requires a little bit of politics and a little bit of doing. And I'm so glad they asked this question, because you and I are the people to talk about it. So anyway, if you are shocked, surprised, inconvenienced, or frustrated that something happens again and again, at some point you do not get to classify it as being a surprise. If it happens once a week, it's your business model. That's how you're set up. That's what your systems are driving everyone towards.
Yes. And the thing that I would add to that is I don't think that as a technician or a team member in this system, you're wrong for feeling exhausted and frustrated with the lack of system.
It's super frustrating.
To validate it. Like, it shouldn't be that hard to get clarity on patient care. Like, when you're standing there watching things fall through the cracks left and right, it's super frustrating because you know that it's not because your team doesn't care. And this leadership team, this lead technician, is looking at it and knowing that there's no structure. And so I just want to validate the scenery and say, like, it is totally understandable that the team is frustrated by this. And also, to your point, like, it's not about anybody being lazy. It's not about anybody being, overly dramatic. It is a systemic problem, and they've made it their business model. And now the question becomes, is it something that you have the power to do something about? And I would say yes, that any member of the team has the power to solve a problem like this. This is not about having to be the boss or the decision maker to be able to bring up a concern and say, hey, this is the problem and this is why it's a problem. Because the reality is, when there's no plan, when there's no system, it's going to be whatever's in front of them. Yes. And when you're a doctor who has, to your point, you're on day of cases that is already on your schedule, plus your own callbacks to make and all of that.
Oh, yeah.
Your priority is not going to be picking up somebody else's problem or leftover from yesterday that you might not even know it is there. You're going to look at whatever's in front of you.
And I didn't mean to crap on the doctors too. Like, trust me, this is me. This is how I think.
Yeah.
And and I also said, you're not going to get paid for these cases probably because everything has been worked out. Like, that's not that's the driver. And my point in all of that was just, you have to see the doctor not as someone coming in and sitting around all scrolling on their phone. You have to see him as someone who comes into a full day of appointments and their own callbacks. Right. And now there's some case that you don't know anything about that is clearly a problem or got problems, or it wouldn't have been hospitalized in the first place. And so there needs to be a system here. So, so there's that. The other piece of headspace that I want to put down, because we're going to fix this problem. And one of the things that people need to understand when they start to look at systems like this is important here to remember that the impact of your plan equals the quality of the plan times the buy-in. And so impact equals quality times buy-in. And I'm saying that because a big part of what do we do here is going to depend on what the team will buy into. Because you could sit down and draft the most intricate handoff system nursing program and plan, and if the doctors are like, I'm not doing that, then it's dead on arrival. It doesn't matter. And the way that you think about it and the way that the team is like, okay, this makes sense. We can fit this into our day. They might be different, but the team is like, we can do it this way. And that way is good enough. Then that's the quality of the idea. If the buy-in is greater, then it's going to do a lot more than your incredibly wonderful plan that has zero buy-in, because anything times zero is zero. And so it's anyway, so that's a headspace for me, but that's kind of the basics of the headspace. Nobody's bad here. It's just you need a program. There's no system.
Yeah, I'm excited. Let's take a quick break and then let's get into some action steps because I have experience some different ways of doing this and I'm excited to talk about some of them.
All right, sounds good. All right, so we're going to do some action steps, and you said you've seen different ways to do this.
Yeah.
To me, and I'm curious if you see this too, this is not one system, this is two systems for me, okay? There is doctor coverage of hospitalized patients. And there is support staff coverage and nursing of hospitalized patients. Those things, they're not the same thing to me. Like, they're not. And they involve different people. And I would split these into two problems, not one. And so you got to kind of juggle both of these balls. But that's how I'd split them up. And so I would say...
That makes sense.
Action step number one for me is recognize this is a nursing program and a doctor patient care program. And they're two different programs. And so this is the lead vet tech writing. You are one of the two people who needs to be involved here. The other person is the medical director. That's it. And so I really, in my heart of hearts, if I could give a gift to this person, it is a good medical director teammate that would say, I see you, let's do this together. And I really want you guys, I think the best case scenario is you guys work as a dynamic duo to have the lead technician leading the support staff and the medical director leading the doctors, and my uncharted heart swells because that is what a medical leadership team doing what a medical leadership team should do looks like. That's what they should do.
I love that. And I think when you mentioned earlier about the impact is multiplied by the amount of buy-in that they get. So would you approach this from a team perspective of like, how do we solve this problem? Or would you approach this from a less cooks in the kitchen, let's come up with a system and then implement said system?
Yeah, definitely not a whole team conversation. So for me, in something like this, all right, this is such a great question. All right, something like this where you say, guys, we're going to change the way that we're working. Like if you go and try to get a Democratic quorum in a staff meeting, it's going to be a complete freaking disaster. And people are going to have a million questions and concerns, and it's going to be a nightmare. This is a project. This is, in my mind, I'm just throwing out numbers here. This is a 90-day project in my mind. And I think you should say, oh, it's going to be 90 days we're going to work on this. And it might take 120 days to actually start to get this really in place and up and going, but 90 days to start with. And so I would say 90 days. And then I would do this in phases. The first thing I would do is try to get my key opinion leaders on board. Who are the people that we need to help create this policy? Who understands what the doctors are kind of going through, who can kind of represent them? And then also, like, what are we proposing to them in broad strokes? And so one is, who are the key people? Who are our, we talk about DACI. We use that a lot. So when you look at a program, who is the driver? Meaning the person, I want this to go. And so it's definitely this lead tech who's written to us. I would love for it to also be the medical director. But and again, if they got a lot of directors, there might be two doctors that are going to drive this. Who are your drivers, right? Who's your approver? Who's the person who needs to bless this? Is it the practice manager? Is it the medical director? Is it, who is it? But who needs to bless this program? So that's your approver. There's your collaborators. And that's who we're starting to talk about now is who's going to help you row this boat? Who wants to collaborate with you on doing this? And the last thing is who's informed. So DACI, your driver, your approver, your collaborators, and who's just informed. Who needs to go what's going on? There are other people who might not fall into any of those buckets. And so I don't know that the kennel tech is in any of these buckets until maybe the end, in which case they need to be informed.
Sure.
But I sort of think of it like that. And so to me, I would roll this thing out and say, who do we need to talk to? How do we start with this? Start to get those people on board. The other thing I would say from an action step standpoint is you do not want to bring the technicians together and say, guys, what do you want to do about hospitalized patients? How are we going to do that? You need to come with a wireframe. And the point of a wireframe is a wireframe has enough structure so that people can see the idea, but it's not all fleshed out. And so people go, well, what if we did it this way? Or what if we changed this? And that's totally fine. That's why it's a wireframe. And so starting to put together a wireframe proposal and then saying, what do you guys think about this? Could this work? I think that that's how I would start this. And then once I had worked on these two projects separately, once I kind of had a general wireframe and I had a couple of the techs who would help me make the wireframe, then me and these other influential technicians that people know and look up to or respect are going to talk to the rest of the team and say, guys, this is kind of what we're starting to think for hospitalized patients. We would like to get input from you all on what's good about this. What do you like about it? What do you not like about it? How could it be improved? And then you're going to allow them to have some time to give you that feedback. And then you're going to continue to bake it in the kitchen and move it towards something that people can be excited about. But you're really going to get a lot farther if you slow down here, talk to people, really work to get buy-in. And there's going to be some people who are not going to like what you're doing. They wish you could do it another way. Make sure that they feel heard. Try not to make them feel steamrolled. Try to accommodate some of what their concerns are as best you can. But do what you can to try to get people on board, because when you get it out and rolling, that buy-in is going to be really important. And so that's kind of how I would do it. I would break it up into pieces. I would slowly include more people. I would really try to build it collaboratively with some other people who are going to be leading the charge to do the work, and then take feedback along. And I would do that for both of those two projects. The lead tech with the medical director standing behind her, arms crossed like a hype man. I see the medical director there blessing this, supporting her. And then when the doctor goes and the medical director talks to the other doctors, I see the lead tech standing behind her, arms crossed, hype man, blessing this, because your lead tech needs to be involved because her team is going to be supporting this. She needs to know what's going on. And so anybody who's like, no techs at the doctor's meeting, I'm like, your day is done, my friends. That ain't how this happens anymore. Like, get your tech team in there and let's build something that's worth a crap. And so anyway, that's a long answer, but does it kind of make sense as far as like breaking it up? Yeah.
Yeah, it does. The way that, especially if you have a bigger team, to your point, when you get everybody's opinion and you have 9 cooks in the kitchen at a time, like it gets messy. And so I think this is where when you have a small team, it's a little bit easier because you have less opinions. And so you might be able to, at a team meeting, say, from a wireframe perspective, here's the problem. Mm-hmm. We don't have a system for assigning a primary DVM if the DVM who starts the case isn't here the next day. So that's problem number 1. And problem number 2 is we don't have a system for the nursing care, to your point. So we have to deal with both of those things. How do we want to solve these problems? Like, you could do that together as a small team. When you get into the big team, it gets to be a nightmare. And so I am a fan, to your point, of getting buy-in. And so for me, the way that we kind of broke those things up is our leadership team was made up of representatives from each team. So we had our lead technician, our technicians, our medical director, and we had an associate doctor who sat in the leadership team as well. So it wasn't just the medical director. We always had 2 doctor perspectives. And so then we would break it out and say, okay, this is the doctor half. You guys go to your doctor team and present the wireframe, and to your point, like, hash it out, hear where everybody's heads are at. What are there problems that we don't even know about that they're experiencing from the doctor perspective? Like, this is what the techs have experienced and shared, but do we have more information we need to gather from the doctor team? The medical director leads that charge, and then the tech leader leads the charge with the tech team and potentially the CSR team, because you have another component of this too, which is the client communication piece. I'm sure if the rest of this is falling through the gaps, you pointed out day 2, there's generally a lot of client communication, and the poor CSRs are probably wondering, well, who the heck are we supposed to hand this off to? Because we don't know whose case it is as well. Mm-hmm. So taking all of those pieces and breaking them out, and then coming back together as a team and reporting out and saying, okay, this is what we talked about. Like, here's all the rest of the pieces of the puzzle. And then that smaller group making the decisions and building the actual structure. This is going to be the process in the system, so that, to your point, when it goes back to the team as a whole, everybody has had the opportunity to feel seen and heard, feel like they have the ability to give input. And at the same time, everybody's not always going to be able to get their way. We're going to have to make a decision. And sometimes we make decisions that people are happy about, and sometimes we make decisions for the good of the business that people are not happy about. But I think when people have the opportunity to feel seen and heard, that's super important. And so I'm with you. Like, I think there has to be a system for who the primary DVM is and how do we handle handoffs when it comes to the DVM care. And then the same from the patient care perspective. And so I think that wireframe is pretty easy to like lay out. There has to be a handoff process.
Yeah.
And then it has to be, the other piece of it is we have to figure out, where does that get recorded? Like, what is the system to know whose patient is? Are we using a whiteboard system? Do we have a Slack channel? Do we have a shared Google Sheet? Does it go in the PIMS and the patient record? Like, where are we recording this information so that anybody at any time can know when that client owner calls and the kennel kid does pick up the phone? How does the kennel kid know who to hand that phone call to?
Right.
Like, how do they know who has that ownership?
All right, we're going to get a little bit further down the weeds here. And I think that you did a really great job of calling out, there's different size practices and different numbers of people involved. And so everything looks different, a different size and everything. I'm going to tell you how I would do this. Again, if I could do it exactly how I wanted and make this thing. So I'll tell you what I would do. Okay. So the first thing, I would do the nursing plan first, and I'll make it clear why. And again, we can kind of run them concurrently, but I'm going to start the nursing plan first. And then I'm going to get my nursing team together, and I would get the medical director there. So let's just say that I'm the medical director and I'm on board with this. My lead tech is running it. I would say, great, let's start the nursing project. And I would get my key opinion leaders together, like the other techs with a lot of experience who others look up to, to say, this is a small group. I don't want to start with everybody. And then the meeting would go like this. Do we agree that there's a problem? And again, I would like to have an example or two. I would say, this is a case that we had last week that was homeless until lunchtime. You know what I mean? Like,
right. Yep.
Like this. And so Buffy Jenkins last week, kicked around. This is, and I would make clear, this is nobody's at fault here. We're not upset, but this happened. And I feel like there's not a clear plan of what's going on. Do you guys agree? And hopefully I can get them to say yes, and then say, I would like for us to change the way that we're doing. We need a nursing system, and then we need to work with the doctors and get the doctors involved. Are you guys willing to help me do this? And I want to get their buy-in. They didn't get drafted. I would like, will you help me make this? And so, yes. So ideally, then the way I would start the conversation is, when we start to get into it, I would say, great, not thinking about us or anything. From the perspective of a patient, what does the absolute best hospitalization experience look like? So let's talk about Buffy Jenkins, right?
Okay.
So just from Buffy's standpoint, without talking about who does what or anything, what happens to Buffy? And I'm looking for things like Buffy gets taken out immediately immediately in the morning and fed, and the technicians appear and do a quick wellness check on him. And the doctor does a check, in the morning and gives the owner a phone call, ideally by this time. And then these other things, the medications are administered on schedule. And we're writing a list of all of these things. Write this down, write it down. And so just the pet, what happens? And say, great, this is what we think the perfect day for the pet looks like. What does that look like for the team? Say, all right, well, who takes the dog out first thing? Who feeds the dog? Who calls the owner? Who or sends an email? Like, who does that?
And how do they know?
And how do they know? That's exactly. How do they know? And great, when we come in for lunchtime medications, how do they know what to give? Because this might be a different person. Is this the same person as this morning? Or is this a different person? Or like whatever. How do they know what was given? How are we tracking that? And it's like, this takes time. Like if you get through only what we've talked about so far is probably at least a 1 hour meeting. And it's just, but it is nitpicking it. How does this happen? Who says this? What is this? What is this? Blah, blah, blah. And again, I would steer away from committing the doctors to thing, other than saying the doctors need to examine this pet in the morning. Like, bam, great. Let's write that down. We're going to have to talk to the doctors about how to get that done. But I like having the medical director there so that the doctors can have peace of mind. Like, hey, look, there's a medical director there. They see everything.
They participated.
Participated. There is a voice from the doctors. So it's like, if this starts to be like, the doctors can come in and do these things and like, hey guys, I don't know if they're going to be able to juggle that in appointments. You know what I mean? Like whatever that needs to be, but you have someone there. The reason I set it up this way is it can be really stressful to talk about systematic changes like this and have the majority of the people in the room not being the people who actually have to do the work. You know what I mean? if you were a tech and all the doctors were there and they were like, no, the technicians need to do this or that.
Right.
You feel,
Yep.
Now, the doctors are going to feel the exact same way when we say, doctors, are you going to take these cases on your day off? Or are you going to handle the communication?
Right.
And the techs are like, I think the same doctor should make the phone call the second day. The doctors do not want your input on this because you're not the one doing it. They don't. And so fair is fair. If you don't want the techs having a big voice in how the doctors are going to handle the doctoring, then the doctors should not have a big voice in how the techs are going to handle the technicianing, other than to say, hey, we think this is representative of our standard of care and blah, blah, blah. And that's why the medical director is there, because that's their job. And so it is a whole lot easier, I think, to get the techs together and say, what would we like the doctors to do? What are we going to do and how are we going to do it? And then we're going to get the blessing of the medical director, and then we can take that plan to the doctors. You know what I mean? And so I would start to get those things sort of going. And the next part is, what does the doctor handoff look like? The medical director needs to lead that meeting. So I would lead that meeting. I would have the lead tech with me here to listen. And I would probably not walk in and give the doctors the whole technician plan right now. I would come in and say, they're working on a treatment plan for the patients. They have made an ask that all the hospitalized patients get examined before 9 a.m. or before 10 a.m. That's their ask. And that doctors are available to talk to pet owners who have questions, and that doctors would communicate with pet owners if something significant has changed in terms of the treatment plan or where we are. Those are the 3 asks from the techs. How do you guys want to do this? Are you okay to provide this? Is this something we can do? Because if they're like, no, we're not on board with this, we need to shoot that out first. Hopefully yes, we agree. This sounds very reasonable.
Sure.
Then the question is, how do we want to provide this? And the doctors can talk about it. And some of them will say, there's way more doctors than you would think who are like, I'm only comfortable with me talking to these pet owners. And I'm like, that's a terrible life choice in my mind. It shows a lack of faith in your teammates. However, I get it. And I have owners that worked in place where I would write a beautiful plan and somebody else would come in and they would look at it and go, not doing this. And they would tear it up. And I'm like, in that case, I don't have faith. Like, we had a plan. We discussed all these things. You weren't there. You know what I mean? And now you're changing everything. And there's a lot more questions and now I'm spending my day off because I'm getting, requests to talk to the pet owner or whatever. So anyway, there's not a right or wrong way to do it. It really depends on your doctors, how things are sorted out, but they need to come up with a plan. And I hate to say it, this does not make sense, but I have 100% worked with practices where everybody hands off cases except Dr. Goss, who's going to do her own communications. And I'm like, you know what? If that's what she needs and she wants to give up her day off, I would tell her, this is strongly discouraged. But if you want to do it, I usually don't fight with people. Anyway. And other people would say, no, you need to make them give those cases up. I'm like, I think that's challenging. It has not made a lot of sense in my hands. What I have said is, okay, we will start off this way and we're going to run this for 3 months. And we're going to see how it's going. It's going to circle back around. And then if in 3 months, the 4 other doctors have got a nice little system together, things are going, I would say to them, how is this going? And then I would go back to Dr. Goss and say, look, the other doctors are all doing this. It seems to be working very well. And then, is there a reason that she should participate? Is it confusing to the support staff? Maybe this is a thing where it's fine. It's just one vet. She's the exception, but everybody knows it and we just let her do her thing. Again, there's a lot of people who are very rigid and they're like, no, all vets must behave the same way. And I'm like, you pick your hill to die on. If the pets are getting the care, if they're getting good care and the technicians don't really care whether this person comes in on their day off as long as the work gets done.
Right.
If they don't really care.
They want to do it. Yeah.
Then I'm like, this may not be a hill I'm going to die on.
I love that. And I think I could go either. I have gone both ways, honestly, trying to force them to get on board with the system. And I've also gone the way of, oh my God, fine. If that's what you like, this is a really bad life choice. And like talking about work-life balance and all the things. But at the end of the day, like if you're going to do it and everybody knows it and it's clearly noted like what the plan is and anybody could see what that you're going to call the owner on your day off or whatever, fine. by all means.
Yeah.
But I think having the system where you're figuring out as a team, like, how do you determine the primary DVM, the patient care piece of it? And then I think the third thing from an action step for me is, I think if you are a practice that is not doing daily rounds, which it sounds like these guys maybe are not, even brief rounds every morning for a quick, structured, this is who's in the hospital, this is what we've got coming into the hospital today, doing status updates and talking about any of the critical flags, like that is so, so important to running smoothly as a team, especially if you actually are hospitalizing patients overnight. So whether you have somebody in the hospital and you're doing a shift change in the morning and you're doing rounds then, or you just have patients in the hospital overnight and no one is there overnight and you're coming in, structuring your rounds so that you do it before, you get started with the day, but that everybody knows these are the patients that are here so that you can figure out if there are any cracks, because the reality is we're human and we're imperfect beings. And at some point, a doctor is going to go home before they finish writing up their plan, and there's going to be a patient that gets forgotten about. You want that to be the exception, not the rule. But by having rounds as a backup option, it gives the opportunity for the tech to be pulling up the patient's chart and look at it and say, well, it looks like we missed getting a plan on this patient last night. So I need to identify who's going to take this case on. And we need to figure out, what we're going to do with it so that it gets treatments today because, Dr. Roark isn't here today. So, how do we create that culture of ownership and not like responsibility to be able to have the team shift their mindset to say, hey, this happened, it got forgotten, but we're going to own it. So how do we take care of this patient for Dr. Roark? Because it's not like we want to throw you under the bus, or it's a shared thing. It's not just Dr. Roark's responsibility. I mean, it is your responsibility. And at the same time, when mistakes happen and when we do have human moments, like, let's create that culture where the team steps up and says, let's take care of these patients.
I've had Dr. Rochelle Lowe on the Cone of Shame podcast, and she is a veterinarian at Mars Veterinary Health. Okay. And so she's at the Mars level, so she's sort of over Banfield and VCA and Blue Pearl and Anacura, and there are other banners. And so she's on this mission right now. She had this research that came out. It's what I interviewed her about. She talks about building a culture of safety. And what she really means is a good culture of event reporting, of saying, and also near misreporting. This was not a big deal because we caught it and Scrappy got her insulin, but this could have gone badly and we need to talk about it. That culture where people are not super defensive and we just go, we botched this handoff yesterday, I think, or this handoff did not go as smoothly as I wanted to. Let's fix it. I think you're spot on. I also think that when you go and you say from a team standpoint and we look at great patient care, I think those huddles, I don't understand really how you do it. I think a lot of people really think that they can automate their way totally out of needing to do it. And again, it's really the devil's in the details. If you're hospitalizing one patient every 3 days, you know what I mean? Then maybe maybe this can be something where you can just have one-on-one conversations with the tech who's going to be in the morning. I don't know. Every practice is different. And so there's not a cookie cutter right way to do it, but I think you're spot on. Those huddles, just to everybody to get on the same page and just to say, who's checking on this patient? Who is the doctor on this patient? And they can say, oh, that's Dr. Goss. So when you get a chance to look at her, go ahead and call Dr. Goss and ask her what she wants to do. I don't know, whatever the workflow is.
Yeah. And I'll give you a Jedi level trick. So we had been doing this since before scribing became a thing in veterinary medicine, but now it's even easier that we have so many scribe options in your practice. Because the first question that I get from other managers is, how the heck do we do rounds when we have different shifts and everybody comes in at different times, or the doctors come in later than the techs, or what does that look like? Like logistically, this is where people often get lost in the weeds on how do we make this happen? And so because it seems difficult, they just don't do it. And this for me is as important as having one-on-ones with your team as a leader. Like, you have to be connecting as a team and doing rounds. And what I would say is, use AI to scribe it for you. Whether you use, we had Google devices in the whole practice. And so we would be like, hey, Google, we're starting our meeting. Please give us a transcript. And Google is connected to the computer and can give us a transcript of the meeting so that we know what are the urgent things. And now the way that technology works at light speed these days, you could use your scribe or an AI and you could connect it to your team Slack or Microsoft Teams or whatever you've got going for team communication so that it goes into a channel so that everybody who comes on shift afterwards has a place to check. So now instead of somebody making notes or somebody being the point person that everybody, when they come on later in the day, has to go to and check in with and find out what they missed at the meeting, now it's all there and it's all done for you. So there's lots of ways to make this easier. And I think that is one of the things that I really have tried to lean into as a manager, because for so many leaders, it's easy to get stuck in the logistics of how do I make this happen? And because it seems difficult, we just don't do it. Mm-hmm. And so I would say this is an area where you can absolutely use technology to be your friend.
Yeah, I completely agree. So I think that's the main sort of takeaways for me at Action Steps. And like I said, there's a lot of different ways to do this, but I hope that people sort of found some pearls in kind of I would break it apart into 2 different programs, and I would include different people, and I would start the technician nursing program before I engage the doctors. And then I would just try to get clear commitments on I would start with what does the amazing outcome, what is the outcome that we're looking for? What does that look like? What is the outcome that we're looking for? And then what is required to make that outcome happen? And how do we want to make that outcome happen? And then working with people to get commitments and then starting to implement and pilot program it. But yeah, this is not going to be a one-time, we have a staff meeting and then we're doing it. Plan on it. But I will tell you, programs like this are transformative. They really, especially if you're implementing huddles and things that didn't exist.
Yes.
If you did only this for the year from a medical leadership standpoint,
it can make a big difference.
That would be a good year, honestly, if you just did this. And then next year, we're going to make another significant sort of improvement in our medical leadership. So anyway.
Try something different.
Definitely.
I love it. I love it. Have a great week, everyone.
Yeah. Take care, everybody. I'll talk to you later on. And that's what we got. Guys, thanks for being here. If you have a question for us, please send us an email. The email address is podcast@unchartedvet.com. That's podcast@unchartedvet.com. And Stephanie and I are happy to try to take a crack at it. So anyway, that's what we got. Guys, take care of yourselves, everybody. We'll talk to you later.